Hello, welcome back to this YouTube channel. My name is Miracle Naji, and like I mentioned in my previous video, I started my career in management consulting and I currently work as an investment professional within a venture capital firm. In my last video, I mentioned that venture capital is a type of funding provided to early stage high growth companies in exchange for ownership stake in the business. In this video, I'm going to be doing a deep dive into a venture capital firm, trying to help you understand what is a venture capital firm, what do they do, and some unique characteristics about venture capital firms that you need to know. Welcome back. In the previous video on introduction to venture capital transactions, I mentioned that venture capital is a type of funding provided to early stage high growth companies in exchange for ownership stake in the business. Invariably, we can say that a VC firm is an institution that is set up to provide this type of financing to emerging companies. An example of a VC firm is Andreessen Horowitz and Sequoia Capital. These are very large VCs that have backed several startups globally, including successful companies like YouTube, PayPal, and Airbnb. The list continues. In Africa, we have big names such as Founders Factory Africa, Ventures Platform, Ingressive Capital, which are all VC firms doing amazing things within the ecosystem. Breaking things down a bit further, venture capital firms are perhaps not the only people providing funding to emerging companies. Emerging companies can get funding from angel investors, family and friends, and accelerators. But this funding is typically small and may not be sufficient to help the company achieve full scale. So, venture capital firms will typically come in to fund a startup when the startup requires a large chunk of capital to build more features into its product, do more growth, grow sales and marketing, hire and expand their teams, move into new geographical territories, etc. At this point, I would like to draw your attention to two different types of venture capital firms you will find in the space. The first one being corporate ventures and the second one being traditional VCs. Let's start with corporate VCs. They are usually investment vehicles set up by large corporate organizations to invest in innovative startups of strategic importance to their already existing business. Say, for instance, a pharmaceutical company decides to set up a corporate ventures arm that is going to invest into biotechnology companies, drug discovery startups, such that after a period of time, they're able to acquire these startups and include the product that they develop into their already existing portfolio in order to drive their future growth. One thing we've seen in the space is that most large corporate organizations, to be able to capitalize on innovation, are increasingly setting up ventures arms so that they can acquire new technology, new innovation that is going to drive their future success. Most of the big pharmaceutical companies in the world have a venture capital arm, and we also see that with big tech companies like Google, like Microsoft, and the rest of them. Now, for traditional VCs, these types of VCs invest other people's money that they usually raise from ultra high net worth individuals, pension funds, endowments, fund of funds. So the critical characteristics here is that the money that they invest are not theirs. They usually raise it from other sources. They are mostly structured as limited partnership. So in a limited partnership, we will have the general partners that are responsible for the day-to-day investment decisions. Oftentimes, they will just have to contribute a small percentage, maybe 1% of the fund that they raise, more like as a GP commit to give them a skin in the game. But on the other hand, we also have the limited partners who are the ones that provide the funding that the venture capital firms will need to invest into startups. But today, our focus is going to be on the traditional VC investors. At this point, let's try to understand some key characteristics of traditional VC firms that drive their investment approach. The first one I'm going to be talking about is high growth. One thing VCs look out for in startups that they want to invest into is high growth potentials. VCs are focused on startups that can scale very fast over time, and as a result, because most times technology companies tend to meet this criteria of being high growth, that is why VC investment has become more synonymous to technology investing. Right. But the critical characteristics of VC when they want to invest into startup is that they want to know that this startup has a high growth potential. And we are going to be seeing why in the next point. The second point is outsized returns. As mentioned earlier, venture capital can be a very risky investment with a high possibility of losing the entire investment. A VC can invest into 100 companies, and out of the 100 companies, like 60 of them could fail, 70 of them could fail, and only perhaps 5 would end up succeed. For this reason, venture capital firms would seek outsized returns from the few investee companies that eventually succeed. This investment approach is what gives birth to the power law as one of the holy grail principles when it comes to venture capital investing. The power law is a principle where one single investment yields a return larger than all other investments combined. These returns can be 10x, 200x, or even 1000x of the investment that was made into that particular company, such that it covers up for other companies that failed. For example, Peter Thiel's founders fund that invested in Facebook achieved over 2000x returns when Facebook eventually went public. The third one we are going to be talking about is investment thesis. VCs would typically have an overarching mandate that drives their investments. For instance, a VC's mandate could be just to invest in emerging technologies or invest in specific sectors like health tech and fintech, while some could be sector agnostic, and some could also have its geographic focus to say that their fund only invests in founders that are domiciled in Africa. So an investment thesis that drives their investment is also a very critical feature about VC firms that you need to understand as a founder, so that you are able to align your pitch to the VC firm, or you're able to align your sourcing for funding to the VC firm that matches, whose investment thesis matches your industry or what you are trying to build. The fourth one I'm going to be talking about is exit. VCs expect to exit the company at some point in the future, typically between 7 to 10 years. This is because VC funds will typically have a fund life. So when a venture capital firm sets up a fund to invest into startup, that fund will typically have a fund life, and the average is about 10 years, which they are expected to exit all the different investments that they were able to make through that particular fund and return back capital to the limited partners who invested in them. The fifth one is minority ownership stake. VCs take up a minority ownership stake in the startup, always less than 50%. But the exact percentage they are going to be taking up will vary largely based on the VC firm. Some VC firms will have their target ownership stake pegged at 10%, and every single check they are writing for founders would be written at an expected equity stake of 10%. The sixth one I'm going to be talking about is close working relationship with the founders. Now, once a VC firm is done with investment, it now moves into the period of portfolio management, where they are actively working with the startup, mentoring them, helping them around areas like business development and other critical business areas, just to ensure that the business eventually succeeds. In summary, in this video, I've tried to explain what a VC firm is, the different types of VC firms, and the unique characteristics that guide how VCs invest, such as emphasis on high growth, desire for outsized returns, minority ownership stake, and close working relationship with the startup. I mentioned that VCs are not only the sources of capital and are not the only sources of capital to startups. In the next video, I will be breaking down 8 other sources of early stage funding for startups, and also try to compare and contrast the difference between VCs and angel investors, both of which are commonly misunderstood. So, see you in the next video.